So I think I'm gonna stay here for 1 hour. I put the clock. And maybe 1 hour and a half. We'll see. My idea today is to pass these algorithms that I have here, merge search and binary search, from JavaScript to Python. And I got into this website called Zero to Mastery. I got a subscription for 1 month and I want to make the best of it. So probably this month I won't be streaming that much, and that's why I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. And my plan now is I have a bunch of algorithms that I have to do. I don't have to do, but I want to do a library from them. From another course that I did on a site called Turing Complete or something like that. That is a website for getting jobs. I think if I type Turing here, it's gonna show up. And then I did all the courses. Yeah, this one. I did all the challenges on this website, and I took notes as I was going through the challenges to see what they were asking for, to see what's important when getting a job as a software developer. And I did pretty much all the courses they have, I think. And one of those courses was about data structures and algorithms. And then I have a bunch of notes on that, and my idea is to see all the algorithms that I have there and look it up them on YouTube and make a library from them. That way I'm gonna learn more about them. And this shoe here I got from another course that I did on Scrimba that I followed along. And yeah. So after I do that, I'm gonna do this and keep going with the other project at the same time. But the other project that I want to continue after I'm done with a lot of courses on the Zero to Mastery, because then I'll be able to have more time to stream and focus on the project. So yeah, but I think I'll still do it every now and then. I don't know how long it's gonna take me to do all these algorithms. So here I can put binary search. And I got the information that I wanted. The script failed a bunch of times because of the way that I was getting the information. I was writing the data frames. But then at the end of the day, I was able to get everything on a data frame. And the next continuing steps on that project, I think, is going to be using the information that I have on that data frame to get the historical data. But I might just focus on doing the animation stuff. Yeah, that's probably what I'm gonna focus on next on that one. And I also finished the other course on physics and in Python. And there was less formulas that I got from that, but the course was really good. I'm probably gonna go back to it at some point. And now I have a library that has at least some different formulas for gradient descent and other algorithms for finding the derivatives of functions. So that's really good. And I can use those algorithms in the other one to maybe try to train some type of AI from scratch. I also have the book that I read, so I can get that book and build my own library then as well, because the book teaches you about how to make a deep learning library by yourself without using the APIs from sklearn. And this Zero to Mastery also has a course on TensorFlow and all the other stuff, so I think I'll definitely go through those as well. And it's gonna probably take me a long time because each course is very long, I think 20 hours or something, and there's at least 5 courses that I want to do, and I have 1 month to do it, so. So binary search, as far as I understand from this, is pretty much you get the array and you split it in two based on the index, and you search that way. And if it is not, if it's not, first you have to sort the list, yeah, and then you split it in two. And if the number is not there, then you pick one of the sides depending on which one, if it's higher or lower, and then you do that again and again until you find the number that you want. So I'm just gonna pass this stuff in Python format. I'm not gonna think very much. Well, actually, that should be, and this is a function, so yeah. Maybe if I type it down here, oops, GitHub Copilot is gonna be able to come up with things as well. Should be interesting to see. Typical comparison function. So I'm not 100% sure if to compare. If Python has this sort thing. Oh, they didn't use ternary. They don't use sort method. Yeah, the sort comes here, I think. I don't remember a lot, so I did it really fast, and I did a bunch of courses as well. That's why I'm doing this again, and I think it's a great idea to pass one to the other. That way I force myself to review what was done and how it was done. So here obviously it's gonna compare the two, and it's gonna give 1 if A is greater than B, 1 minus 1 otherwise, if B is less than A, and then 0 if neither one is the case. So it returns 0 and it finds the number, I think. Or when it reaches the end of the array and the number wasn't found. So this is a function as well with loops. Array element compare. Default compare. Yeah, this is also not really good to do, I think. That's the thing. I heard because of some reason of the way the Python deals with arguments. So for some video I've seen, I think it's them coding, the name of the guy. He talks about you shouldn't make default variables like this. If you wanna make a variable equals something else, you should put it here inside. But I don't remember really well, so I think I'm just gonna leave it like this and probably watch the video. Maybe I can search it up. Pretty sure it's them coding, the name of the guy. The channel, not the guy. Python argument defaults. Arguments. Yeah, this one. I might just watch just 4 minutes.
Today we're talking about.
Let me see if change the thing. Oh yeah, the course that I did recently is about freelancing. So that's another thing that I'm thinking about doing. And I might even stop the project actually now that I think about it. Once I'm done, oh, actually, I'm gonna do the rest of the course because I wanna get good at connecting databases because so far I've only experienced, I only did things with pandas, and I wanna get good at connecting projects with databases because that's the standard that people seem to do, and it's also probably better to dealing with large amounts of data. So I'm gonna use the knowledge that I get from the courses, and I'm gonna finish the other project based on that. It's just so I can get some practice. But then after that, after I deal with that part of the project, I might look it up on Upwork, on Fiverr, and all the other freelancing websites, and I'm gonna search for the skills that people want. I'm probably gonna do this on stream, and then I'm gonna make a list of the things, and probably make projects based on that. And I'm also gonna see if I can get if I can go after people that maybe want projects, maybe have some problem, and then solve their problem for free. And that way, I also got a great idea from a guy that he said nobody wants about this freelancing stuff. He said about that nobody wants free stuff because free is associated with poor quality and makes a lot of sense. So what he advises should do is to make a money back guarantee promise, and that seems a lot better because essentially you're saying the same thing. Like, since I'm starting out, I give you money back guaranteed, and that way it doesn't sound like the quality is gonna be worse. So I think that strategy is probably better to start out. At least so far, that's what I plan on doing, I think. And then as I get the skills, I'm gonna take those skills and do projects on stream with them, and hopefully I'll be able to find some projects that I can do with this money back guarantee strategy and record all this process. I think it's gonna be cool if I can make it. Which I'm not sure, to be honest, because it's very competitive and I don't have working experience, so I might need to get a job first, but we'll see what happens.
How to tell if an optional parameter has been passed in. This first case is the lucky case because we don't have to. In this case, x is either passed in or it gets the value 42. But it's not always possible to put the value of your default argument in the function definition up here. For instance, in this case, the default argument that we want is the length of an array. We can't know that length when we define the function, so we have to compute it dynamically. Another reason not to put a default value up here is if the default value is mutable like a dictionary. Default values are defined at the time that the function is defined, not when the function is called. So if you had a default mutable argument like a dictionary, then that dictionary would be shared amongst all calls to the function. Doing this is a very common source of bugs. So you might be tempted to do the following. Set the default value to none and then use a Boolean expression to tell whether or not none was passed in. This isn't always wrong, but I do think it's a bad habit. What if 0 or the empty dictionary were valid parameters? This code would throw out those parameters and replace them with the defaults. What I recommend doing is the following. Again, keep none as your default argument, and then set x to be either itself if it's not none, or otherwise compute the default. This explicit check to see whether x is none allows us to pass in 0 if we need to. You can also do it this way, explicitly checking if the parameter is none, and setting the default if it is. I prefer always using this explicit check against none because it's one less thing that I have to think about. I don't need to worry about whether 0 or an empty object might be a valid parameter. However, there is one exceedingly rare case where this still isn't enough. What if I actually want to distinguish between the cases when a user passes in none versus when they don't pass in anything? If you are writing a function this way, I really encourage you to take a look at your function and think about it. Do you really need to distinguish those cases? Is there any way you can avoid it? Most of the time, I think you can avoid it, but especially for code that writes other code or highly generic code, sometimes it just can't be avoided. For those cases, we'll use something called a sentinel. A sentinel is an object whose sole purpose is to check whether or not something is or isn't the sentinel value. In many cases, it's okay to use the Python built-in none as a sentinel value. That's what we did in the previous example. But if we want to distinguish none, then we have to make our own sentinel. Once again, we just set the sentinel to be the default value, and then check explicitly using the is operator whether or not the passed-in argument is the sentinel. Now we can easily distinguish whether we have the sentinel value or none. Here we have two example uses of the sentinel pattern in the Python standard library. On the left, we see its use in the data classes library, and on the right, we see its...
I think I'm gonna leave it the way that it is there. But I think I get his point. The only issue that I don't think he addressed is if you assign the variable here, it's gonna be defined as a local variable. And yeah. because that's for a structure. He's talking about a structure like a list or something like that. But in this case, I have a function, so I'm not exactly sure. Let's say if I have another variable outside and I wanna, yeah, maybe it works because it's global, so it's gonna get from the global one if it doesn't find on the local scope. But so maybe let me just do it like he did there, because why not? So compare equals default compare if uh, default compare is not none else no. No. I think that's the way he did it.
Today we're talking set the default value to none, and then you need to. You can also do it this
I did the length of the array. But I think this way is probably okay. Yeah, the issue here is that I would have to pass the elements A and B. That's the problem. And now that I think about it, I don't understand really well how it works there on JavaScript. I guess you're accessing here. So maybe doing this way doesn't work. And I think here I don't have to declare as well the function. Because if I not declare, call it, because if I call, it's gonna call the function. It's not what I want. It's probably just making it equal. And GitHub Copilot suggests this thing. Yeah, but I'm gonna erase this one. I'm gonna do it just like the way that it is. They went through a bunch of different ways to create these things here. And then they explain why one is better than the other. And what are advantages and disadvantages of each one. It's incredibly good. I really recommend. I think so far is the best site that I learned from when it comes to front-end web development. So Miro equals math. Oh, does Python have math? I think it's just math. Right. And this one is inside here. Yeah, so this is saying while the right is greater or equal to the left, you keep going. The middle is gonna be the split of the list. And then this compare, which is a switch. I think Python has switch as well. I don't remember really well. Maybe it doesn't. So I'm just gonna look it up. I remember using it, I think. Yeah, maybe it was on C++ actually, not on Python. So it looks like, oh, it does have switch here. Ah, no, it actually doesn't. It's just creating a dictionary. using get. So I think I'm just gonna use if and elif. Probably better than the other ones. So if compare elements, oh, it's actually the other way. Probably doesn't matter that much, but maybe it does because the way that you compare matters. Yeah, so you have the element, then you have the middle. So if the element is greater than the middle, it returns 1. If it's not, it returns -1 or 0. Yeah, so when they're equal, it returns 0. And if you just keep going and it doesn't find anything, it's gonna return -1. -1 indicates is the index that indicates that the element doesn't exist on the array. So yeah, now it's just the same thing. Git the copilot does everything by itself. So if compare is if it's less than 0, then the right becomes the middle -1. And -1 should exclude the element that was included in the previous one. Should exclude the middle element of the last one, I think. Just make sure that this is correct. Yeah. So if less than 0, then it is this case where the middle is greater than the element. Middle is greater than the element. It looks like it's right, but I'm just trying to think to see if I really understand. So initially is the whole array 0 and the length, and then you catch the middle. And then if the middle, so in the case the middle is greater than the element, it means that the element is in the first part of the list. So that's why the right becomes the new middle with -1. So you get the subsection of the left. And in the other case, the element is greater, which means that the left becomes the new middle. Yeah, pretty simple. And then I think, yeah, but then what do I return here? That's the difference. I return middle, I think. Yeah, that's the problem. Because there I'm using a switch. Oh, actually, this works because you're just searching until you get to 0. Yeah. And then when it gets to 0, it returns the middle. And then if it doesn't get you anything, it's gonna return -1, which indicates that it doesn't exist. So it's the same thing. So let me go to the next one. Yeah, he already knows what I wanna do. It's crazy. Yeah, but it doesn't get perfectly. It's probably because this exists on a repository somewhere. Maybe I should make these comments here as well. Version 2. Fixed memory. Version. So this one takes array element, compare, default compare. Left equals 0, right equals array, not length. Yeah, but that's the problem here. I can't, minus 1. I can't really do this on Python. Yeah, there isn't any array here. Yeah, so I can just do the same thing that the guy did there on the other one, which is right equals, here I put none. Well, actually, copy this first. And R none. Or maybe I should put 0. No, that doesn't make sense. Yeah, I think I'm just gonna put it equal to this. Because they're gonna have to pass an array anyway. I'll be right back. I also got a bunch of courses, not a bunch, I think two extra courses on Scrapey and Selenium. And I did one course already on Scrapey, but I think I'm gonna do Scrapey with Selenium because I couldn't find anything with Scrapey and Playwright. And reading the documentation and trying to figure out by myself is probably gonna take too long. So I think Selenium is a lot easier to use with Scrapey. And there's also another thing called Splash, which apparently is used as well to scrape interactive websites. So that's probably something that I'm going to do at some point. Because it is a required skill, and it makes a lot of sense, goes directly with machine learning and AI, because one of the core things on machine learning and AI is getting the data. So I think that's an essential thing that I have to master. So the right, if left, greater than right, return -1. So this is the same. Middle is the middle, comparison is the function, comparing the element in the middle. And then it returns the function itself. So if they're the same, returns middle, compare less than, returns the thing. Yeah, but then the only difference is that it's gonna call itself, but next time the right is gonna be middle -1. And in case that the element is less than the middle, and otherwise it returns the left is equal to middle middle +1. So I think this is correct. The only thing that I'm gonna make it different here is just put right equals to this, just so it's easier to understand. So now it doesn't work. Yeah, if I do it like this, also doesn't work. Oh, it's because the positional in Python positional arguments can't. I got this mistake before as well on another project that I did. So whenever you have something that has a default value, it has to come after all the other ones. But I think this is better to understand. So next one, Taylor recursion. And probably GitHub Copilot's gonna do everything again. Okay, so the same thing happens as the other one. So if it's 0, it turns 0, and then here's different. So it's returning the bounds, which is an array with the elements. And the difference here is that this one makes a copy of the bounds. And then instead of returning the left and right values, it returns the array. I don't understand how this works though when it gets to this point. Because then the next time is gonna be the array new bounds and not the elements. So how can I find the I guess probably in JavaScript math.floor works on arrays as well, but yeah. So maybe I should do the same and see what happens. There's also this difference that here they're using math.floor. And I think the floor gets, it either is rounds up or rounds down or something like that. And here I'm not using it. And so on the other ones, I probably should do this floor as well. Because otherwise, if you have an array with 31 elements, for example, obviously you're gonna get 15, 15.5. And then it matters if you round up or down. I think floor. Yeah, so middle, then comparison equals compare element middle. If new bounds equals, yeah, so now is an if else statement. Yeah, that's the difference here. I'm pretty sure Python doesn't have ternary, but maybe it does actually. I'm gonna try to do it with the ternary. The same way that it is there. Doesn't work, I'll think about it. So it does have. Maybe it doesn't. Yeah, I don't think it does. So obviously I'm gonna have to do if else statement. Or if comparison is equal to -1. And here it's strict as well. Oh, is this? So when I use the strict equality, it says it expects expression. Not sure why this happens. New bounds is equal to left middle -1. Else new bounds. Yeah. So I think I'm just gonna do with the third one, but with true equal signs. Not really sure why that is happening there. And then here is obviously where it's probably different in Python. I'm not even sure if I can't do it this way in Python. That doesn't work. And if I put like this, also doesn't work. Yeah, so I understand what it's doing here, but I'm not sure if I can think about any way that to make this work on Python. Because here, what I really don't understand is how is this new variable here being turns into the two ones here with the left and right boundary. Because it's checking right away, just see. So probably what is happening is that this creates a copy of the array, which is this, and then as JavaScript calls the function, it splits the array based on the position of the arguments. That's probably what's happening. But how can I do the same thing in Python? Because if I return, maybe if I just return new bounds, but then does it work? Let me call and see, I think. And I'm also gonna change to list instead of arrays. I think I can, yeah, I have to here. I don't have to because it's the name of the argument, but it's better if I, so I'm pressing Ctrl D to select all the ones that have array. Then list. There we go. So I'm gonna make a list. Bob. Oh, and the list has to be sorted so it works. And then I'm gonna call this if Bob element well, it's probably better to be either one of the ends. Then default compare. Oh, actually I don't need to. No, I do need to pass the function. And then, yeah, the other ones are not necessary. So now I'm gonna run this and see what happens. Oh, I don't think I have a Python interpreter for this one. But it works. Yeah, there is actually one here. Which I guess is just the standard one. The global interpreter. List object has no attribute length. Oh, so it's length like this. So I guess I have to change on the other ones. And maybe it's not a good idea actually to have the name as list because list is a keyword in Python to create a list. But I don't think it matters that much. So here Yeah. Maximum recursion dump. Hmm. So it does split into new bounds 0 and new bounds. But it didn't stop anywhere. Hmm. Yeah, I guess because it keeps going, that's the problem. Oh, I didn't return here. That's the thing. Forgot to return -1 here. Oh, actually, it's not on this line. It's the one previous to that I forgot. Turn -1. And now it should work probably. It still doesn't. Oh, it's because of this. Hmm. Yeah, that's the thing. Because I'm always making this equal to the thing in the beginning. That's the problem. So I can't really do this. But why does making... Well, actually it works, huh? Let me see if it works like this. Line 68. Yeah, because now is... So I should change the name of this. This... I'll just use array here. Yeah, but then it doesn't work. So I guess I can leave it just with the right and then call with the length. I don't understand why it works here though. I guess if you make right equals none and you make it equal to a value, inside the function is also gonna go into an infinite loop. So probably, yeah, at the beginning of the first time you call it, it assigns this value, but then the other times it replaces that value with the new one from the recursion. And that's the difference between making a default default value inside the argument of the function and inside the function. But then apparently you can't do this in Python, but so I'm not really sure if it is even possible to get the length here somehow. Because I guess the difference is the way that JavaScript and Python deal with arguments in memory. That might be an interesting thing to search. I know that JavaScript has some differences when declaring variables, where if you declare a function, it puts the function on top of the file, and if you declare a variable with let, it does the same thing, where you can have some weird effects of you declare the function and you declare a variable and then puts on top of the other thing that you didn't expect to be on top of, and then you get differences in values because JavaScript puts the let keyword and the var keyword in different places, different scopes, and then it's different than as if it was executing sequentially because of the way that the declaration works. So there's definitely a difference here as well on the arguments. And now there's the same problem where I have to put this one here because the other one is a default argument. Oh, actually, it should come even before the other ones. Yeah, but I wonder if that's gonna screw up the call here, so I might have to change. Because that's the problem now. Oh, and here it automatically puts like this. So it's not like it was splitting. It's just that the Copilot did it that way. And I think here is probably, yeah. And here's list, should be array. In instances of int and function. So obviously it's this one. That's another difference. Because even though this is returning a value, in Python is different. Maybe if I wrap this inside of int, the conversion. I'm gonna take this parenthesis off. But I think I'm gonna search this, just see both the argument stuff and this comparison. Even if this works. Yeah, it still doesn't work. It's 78. 97. And 97 is just a call. So the problem is here. Oh, that's the thing. That's the issue. Is because, yeah, so maybe here is fine. It was fine. It's because of the way that the arguments are structured here now. Yeah, so this has to come here. But I'm not even sure if that's gonna work. So let's see. Because the way I'm calling it here. Yeah, it doesn't work. It doesn't work because of the way that I'm calling it here. Oh, I need to pass right. That's why I forgot to pass right. So length Bob -1. Maybe now it works. It's still the same thing. Or maybe because I'm making it equal there, I don't need to call this as well. But why is not working now? Between int and list. Hmm. So it thinks this is a list. Interesting. Instances of int and list. Let me see. Maybe I should try to declare this outside and see if it probably is not gonna have any difference, but probably. Yeah, doesn't work. Let me see if I put a number here. 5. It still doesn't work. So maybe it's not the problem is the way that I'm declaring these variables here. It's probably on this call actually. So maybe I shouldn't be passing this one. But saying that, but I think this is on the second time that it goes through the function. Yeah, in line 91. So it's the second time. Still doesn't work. Yeah, so I don't think I'm gonna implement this, but I'm gonna search for the differences there. Yeah, the issue is that this kind of things are kind of hard to search for. Difference between arguments, declaration, Python, JavaScript. So just, I think it's just not a good solution for Python because of the differences in the way that lists are handled and the way that the arguments work. But it might be that I'm missing something. I'm pretty sure that Python has spread operator as well. Yeah. So I think the main difference is in the way that the functions are declared. Because here I can't do this. New bounds doesn't work. Neither this. Let me see if I can do it inside of the function. Hmm. Let's wrap around this. It still doesn't work. Yeah. But here it's showing up like this. Oh, that's JavaScript. That's why. Also, Python use this. I think it works in the same way that pointers work on C++. So you're referencing the numbers. So it doesn't have the spread operator. And this is used for arguments as well, I think. Yeah. And keyword arguments take two of them. So maybe if I do it like this, it'll bounce. It should be the same as this one. But then I still have a problem with making the right side equal to the value there in the beginning. Yeah. So let me search the difference between arguments in JavaScript and arguments in Python. And so I guess I never thought about it that way with the starting the asterisk. Not sure if that's how you say it, but this symbol here, where usually when you have a function where you want to put arguments but you don't want to specify which arguments, you just want to take an arbitrary number, you do like this, and then yeah, but I didn't associate this with the referencing thing from C++. So I guess what's happening is you're creating a pointer to however whatever arguments you're gonna pass there, and that's why it works, because when you call that object or that variable, whatever it is, it's gonna reference to the pointer that was created in the argument of the function. But then it brings an interesting question of why does the keyword arguments have true instead of one? So maybe that's the way that I can understand this better. Because searching for the difference between arguments in Python and arguments on JavaScript, it's going to be harder to find something that is relevant. I guess if I go to the official documentation, maybe it's better to find something. In JavaScript, it's called hoisting, I think. This difference in scopes and declarations of the functions. But Python, besides the thing that people say, the simple stuff of how to use each one, they don't explain the scope thing. At least I haven't seen anywhere. And why is it that way instead of just saying how it works? It probably comes from C++. There's actually the arrow thing as well. It also comes from C++, which is a referencing thing. So maybe what I could do is search for when two double stars are used on C++. And it seems like uh, C++ is obviously Python and JavaScript come from C++, but it seems like they split. Yeah, it's probably what happened actually. Now that I think about it, because everything in the universe works that way, where C++ is the combination of both, and then they got split in the middle in order to specialize between front end and back end, and then that goes the tree. So Python got some stuff from C++, and JavaScript got other stuff, other attributes, and yeah, and that's the main differences between them. And the more specialized it becomes, obviously, it still remains the first principles, but the the details change. So I think it's more important to know the first principles, and probably that's why it is very important to know this argument stuff and scope, because this is the stuff that doesn't change with the languages. It does change, but it's the fundamental part. It's kind of like in chess, you have opening principles, and in order to master something, you have to know the principles, and then you have to know how to break them. And the most important part is knowing how to break them. So I think this is the same thing here, is that we have the principles of how scopes and functions and everything works, but if you want to get really good, you will need to understand the exceptions and why they are exceptions. So I think I'm probably going to spend time trying to really understand this, because it's probably more important than understanding how the algorithm works. Which I already do, but how the specific implementation of this binary search works in Python. I think the value that I'm getting out of this is more about understanding the first principles and the differences, rather than exactly how to make that one version of the algorithm work. Maybe you can try to find the GitHub thing on Python with the source code, and then look at the GitHub. Try to find these things on the source code and try to understand where they come from. Because now, I think I already tried to do this in the past, but now I understand much better, I think, how the languages work. And I understand a little bit of C++, so I can try to deduce the logic behind the creation of these things. And might be interesting to look at as well. Yeah, but at least from here I can't find. I'm gonna search for a kwargs documentation. First I'm gonna search for in here. And I'm gonna look at these ones. This module has the ability to import Python modules and packages from zip format archives. It is usually not needed to use the zip import module explicitly. It is automatically used by the built-in import mechanism for syslab-path. Items that are passed through zip archives. Typically, this path is a list directory names as strings. I think at some point I read this already. I'm gonna close this. Foreign function library for Python. C-types is a foreign function library for Python. It provides C-compatible data types and allows calling functions in DLLs or shared libraries. It can be used to wrap these libraries in pure Python. C-types tutorial. The code samples in this tutorial use doc tests to make sure that they actually work. Since some code samples behave differently under Linux, Windows, or macOS, they contain doc tests, directives, and comments. And the thing about C++ being the collection of Python and JavaScript being the split symmetry of C++ also makes me think that Linux is the same way for Windows and Mac. But I'm not sure if that makes sense. Because I actually don't know which one came first. But I think Windows and Mac came first. But yeah, it makes a lot of sense to me that Windows and Mac are the symmetry, and then Linux is the collection of them. But the distribution is not. The distribution of people, at least, is asymmetrical between them, so it might be a different relationship there. There might be a deeper level that contains the fragmentation of the tree, let's say. But usually, well, even if there is a deeper level, it has to be symmetrical at some point, I think. So it's just a matter of understanding which point the tree splits. And that obviously interferes with programming because different operational systems deal with information in a different way. So I think understanding these principles is also something that probably makes you a lot better at programming. Because then you start understanding how things translate. It's kind of a double-edged sword because at the same time, it doesn't feel like he's making you better initially, but I think long term it's probably the difference between someone that is really good and someone that is not, is understanding these principles. But at the moment it doesn't, because it is not something that's very practical. So obviously you need to do both, but yeah. So it should not be confused if C-long is printed, if you would expect seeing it. Loading dynamic link libraries. You load libraries by accessing them as attributes of these objects. CDLL load libraries which export functions using the standard CDCL calling convention, while WinDLL libraries call functions using the standard calling convention. Here are some examples for Windows. I think I'm gonna read this now. Maybe one thing that I should look at, because it's something that because I was thinking about when I was doing the project in the DEX project of converting DEX, the decentralized exchanges data into an animation on Canvas. I was thinking about doing that in C++, but then I thought about how to make the connection there. And I think the answer to that is pretty much that the JavaScript gets interpreted and is converted into machine code. And along those steps, I imagine that you can make the connection between C++ and JavaScript. So I think probably one thing that it might be worth it to do is understanding the compiler and how it works, how a compiler works, and how JavaScript gets translated into lower level languages. And if I understand that, then I can understand how to code in C++ to translate it into JavaScript. You rather choose C++ on the browser instead of using JavaScript. And then obviously it's going to be a lot faster, the calculations and the bridge. And I think it's also something that might be good to do because, like I said before, JavaScript and Python are probably the symmetrical split of C++. So if you understand this the interpreter, the bridge between the languages, you understand how to navigate between them by using the. It's kind of like C++ is on the bottom, and then you have Python, you have JavaScript, and then you can use the compilation in order to bridge the gap. So if you understand how the compiler works, it's probably a lot easier to connect both languages, I think. But then it's a question of what's the standard to do, which is probably not doing that. So there's a trade-off there as well, because if I do it things this way by using C++ mostly and then compiling it in a way that I use a part of the C++ code for the front end and a part for the back end, then it's probably going to be different than the way that it, well, but actually that's probably what's happening already. It's just that you're not doing the compilation dynamically. It just comes built in with the Python library and the JavaScript library. That's the difference. So it might be, it probably is the way that it works if you want to code something in C++ in order to display in the browser, now that I think about it. You're just coding in C++ and then, but then that's the difference, because in order to understand what you can do or you can't do on C++ in order to translate to the browser, you have to understand how the compiler works. So you're essentially just making the same code for both backend and frontend whenever you're coding for C++, but there might be differences in the way that you program, having in mind for which purposes it's going to be used, because the compiler is going to have a different interpretation for both, I think. Their interpreter for each language. So I think that actually this might be very important to understand. So I'm probably going to study that, actually. Because at least the level I'm at right now, I think that's probably what's most useful to do. Because the biggest roadblock that I have right now and the thing that I want to do is this integration between the two and also making things faster. So I understand how it works now of APIs and also connecting front end to back end by using these calls, these requests, and creating the server using these frameworks like Django and Flask. But I don't really understand. It's not really clear to me the connection between them that makes the bridge. And I think that might be something that helps as well with the integration with databases. Yeah, that's another interesting thing to study, which how databases are related to Python and JavaScript languages. If they're coming from a low level like C++, which probably yes, the languages come, or if they are something separate that comes from assembly and is just another branch of the tree. Sometimes a C API function expects a pointer to a data type as parameter, probably to write into the corresponding location, or if the data is too large to be passed by value. This is also known as passing parameters by reference. C types exports the byref function, which is used to pass parameters by reference. So this is probably the thing that is used for the arguments, I think. The same effect can be achieved with the pointer function, although pointer does a lot more work since it constructs a real pointer object, so it is faster to use by RAF if you don't need the pointer object in Python itself. Yeah, now I want to search for where SQL comes from, the language that it comes from, or if it's something separate. I think actually this is what I'm gonna do. Actually, now that I think about it, on stream. Then off stream, I focus more on the stuff that is more practical, the courses for now. And then on stream, I study this bridge between C++ and the Python and JavaScript and SQL. And then once I'm done with all the courses, I can connect the two and finish the decentralized exchange project. That's gonna make things connect a lot better in my mind. C types do not support passing unions or structures with bit fields to functions by value. While this may work on 32-bit x86, is not guaranteed by the library to work in the general case. Unions and structures with bit fields should always be passed to functions by pointer. Structure, union alignment, and byte order. By default, structure and union fields are aligned the same way the C compiler does it. It is possible to override this behavior by specifying a pack class attribute in the subclass definition. This must be set to a positive integer and specifies the maximum alignment for the fields. This is what program pack also does in MSVC. C-types uses the native byte order for structures and unions. To build structures with no native byte order, you can use one of the big Indian structure, little Indian structure, big Indian union, and little Indian union base classes. These classes cannot contain pointer fields. So this is another thing, is that some computers store data in a different way. The big Indian, I think big numbers come first on the memory section. A little Indian, small numbers come first. I think that's the difference. And this relates to the operational system, I think, maybe. I'm not 100% sure, but I think that's how it works. I'm not sure if it's based on the computer or the operational system. I think it's, yeah, I'm not really sure actually. I have to review that. And it's possible to create structures and unions containing the fields. Okay. So I think I'm gonna close this. Turns a lightweight pointer to object, which must be an instance of a C-type's type, offset defaults to 0, and must be an integer. It will be added to the internal pointer value. This module provides an implementation of the heap queue algorithm, also known as the priority queue algorithm. Heaps are binary trees for which every parent node has a value less than or equal to any of its children. This implementation has a value less than or equal. So the top of the tree is the smallest number. Yeah, this implementation uses array for which heap k less than or equals to this, and heap k for all k, counting elements from 0. For the sake of comparison, no existing elements are considered to be infinite. The interesting property of a heap is that its smallest element is always the root. The API allows differs from textbooks heap algorithms in two aspects. I think this is for later probably. Yeah, so these algorithms of binary search and merge sorts, they are used for these types of structures where you have lists and you have different ways that the numbers of the list interact with themselves, and the purpose is to optimize the search in those data structures. And that's why I have a bunch of different types of them, because each one is gonna be faster for each type of data structure, depending on what you want to do. But I think I'm gonna focus more now on this other stuff because I think it's more fundamental and important. Then later on, I go back to translating from JavaScript to Python. That's the thing that I hate about this sites and these things that teach you how to do things, is that they're more concerned into making you know standard things and memorize the names instead of teaching from first principles and trying to understand the fundamentals behind the things. It is a necessary evil because you also need to have names and standards so people can communicate with each other and coordinate, but it's not very efficient to learn because then you're just trapped by the names of merge sort or binary search, when it really doesn't matter. It's more about the fundamental principles behind it. This module provides abstract base classes that can be used to test whether a class provides a particular interface, for example, whether it is hashable or whether it is a mapping. I think I'll be right back. Let me see how long do I have here. Oh, it's already past the 1 hour. And that's weird. It didn't. Maybe I didn't do it the correct way. Oh, it's because I turned off the notification settings. I was thinking that it's weird that it didn't say anything. I felt like it passed more than 1 hour. Now it should work. Let me see how long we've stayed here. Yeah, 1 hour and a half. So actually I should probably stop here because I have to do the other courses. I might come back later and start studying this SQL stuff because I'm really curious. Yeah, this is what I'm gonna do. I think I'm gonna do the course for about 3 or 4 hours, and then after that, because just doing the course is not gonna be enough to integrate the knowledge, so I'm gonna do the course for around anywhere between 2 and 4 hours, and then I'm gonna go back to streaming and study this relationship between SQL, C++, and the other languages. And I think if I do this back and forth, it's gonna be better to retain the information. So, see you then.